Politico, 12th of April 2024, the rationale behind Scholz's submission to the Chinese dragon. This week, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz found himself at an unforeseen crossroads. Even by German standards, the 65-year-old chancellor, regarded humorless, celebrated his TikTok debut by pledging not to dance. If solely. Scholz was grooving even though his unanticipated TikTok endorsement was more amenable kabuki than engaging jig. Scholz, who arrived mere days prior to his visit to China, the domicile of the contentious social network, appeared frantic to persuade Beijing that a comrade was en route. Reasonably so, Scholz needs China. The leader of Europe's faltering economic engine has less than a year until the next national election before Germany. Time is running out for him to perform a miracle and restore his government's disastrous reputation among the German people. Since assuming office in late 2021, Scholz's three-day visit to the Middle Kingdom on Saturday will be his most extensive and consequential overseas excursion. The Chancellor, plagued by a fractious coalition and record-low approval ratings, views the tour as an opportunity to demonstrate to voters that he will do anything to preserve Germany Incorporated, Zeitgeist be damned. Business takes precedence over all else. The United States, considered Germany's greatest protector, has been pressuring Berlin to de-risk its relationship with Beijing. This is just one reason why Scholz would prefer to avoid China. Not to mention the recent shambolic record of human rights in China. China has adopted an authoritarian stance under the leadership of President Xi Jinping, stifling the democratic movement in Hong Kong and forcibly relocating over 1 million Uyghurs, a predominantly Muslim minority, to re-education camps that resemble concentration camps. One might anticipate that Germany, of all nations, would be attuned to the plight of an ethnic minority compelled to reside behind barbed wire. At the same time, armed guardians stationed in watchtowers scrutinize them menacingly. Reassess oneself. Despite German leaders' persistent reaffirmation of their steadfast commitment to upholding the utmost ethical principles, Berlin has repeatedly demonstrated its unwillingness to compromise its economic well-being in favor of human rights, American security concerns, the European Union, or even human rights. Analyze Russia. Germany, which had for years disregarded allies' warnings regarding its dependence on Moscow, did not begin weaning itself off Russian energy until early 2022, when Russian tanks started to approach Kyiv. Scholz did not precisely heed his lesson. Any concerns he might have had regarding Germany's excessive reliance on other nations have dissipated in the storm clouds currently enveloping the economy. Like other gambits executed under pressure, Scholz's China stratagem does not guarantee success. On the road to hell, German exporters had access to gold for decades, bolstering their financial gains and sustaining Germany's standing as one of the leading global economies. However, that road has recently resembled the highway to purgatory due to Beijing's increasingly protectionist measures and stringent industrial policy. A recent survey by the German Chamber of Commerce in China revealed that two-thirds of German companies had lodged complaints regarding unfair competition within the nation. Concurrently, the European Union is growing more dissatisfied with China's substantial subsidies on its most vital sectors, including automobile and wind turbine manufacturers. Local automakers in Europe are being put under such intense pressure by an avalanche of inexpensive Chinese electric vehicles that Brussels is contemplating implementing tariffs as early as this summer. Although inexpensive imports have also impacted Germany's auto industry, major manufacturers such as Mercedes and BMW are opposed to supporting sanctions against China for fear of jeopardizing their business interests there if Beijing retaliates, which is highly probable. To put it another way, a return is not possible. In the 1980s, when the German industry first entered China, executives and legislators viewed the move as an investment in the future. As a result of economic growth, China would liberalize and even adopt democratic principles. Although it was a commendable theory, as the Uyghurs can attest, it did not materialize. China has invested decades in acquiring knowledge from the West and developing its technologies to the extent that it no longer depends on nations such as Germany. Unfortunately, Germany continues to rely on China. German corporations, including Volkswagen and Siemens, which initiated investments in China 4 decades ago, have since integrated the nation into their worldwide operations. Volkswagen sells approximately 50% of its automobiles worldwide from China alone. Volkswagen continues to operate a factory in Xinjiang, where the Uyghurs are being detained. Despite the company's troubling past, it was established during World War II and was funded by the Nazis. While the organization has faced criticism in Germany for its refusal to evacuate, it would betray the Chinese leadership if it did so. Although Germany's largest corporations, including chemical manufacturers and automakers like BASF, are the most exposed to China, many of their suppliers have also made substantial investments in the nation. Trade with China brings us prosperity and is practically irreplaceable in the short term, said Moritz Schularik, president of the Kiel Institute for the World Economy. Economic stagnation. Economists and the International Monetary Fund anticipate the German economy will stagnate following a lackluster 2023. This year, exports have declined by more than 2%, and there are no indications of any forthcoming improvement. Even though employment in Germany remains robust, this could change rapidly if the economy fails to recover. Although Germany encounters numerous obstacles to its growth, including an ongoing shortage of qualified labor and excessive regulation, confident economists consider the pessimistic outlook among businesses and consumers to be the most crippling. Economist Timo Wollmerhauser of the IFO Institute, one of Germany's preeminent economic think tanks, based in Munich, said the German economy appears paralyzed. Confusion and insecurity are prevalent. Given the context above, Scholz's journey to China is desperate. The Chinese economy is no longer the growth engine of the past, notwithstanding the country's decision to allow greater foreign competition and cease price gouging in Europe. Due to a real estate crisis and overcapacity in critical sectors, the Chinese economy is in peril. Even more concerning for Germany is that China has lost interest in machinery and other highly engineered capital products, which has propelled German export expansion to China over the past few decades. This is not solely attributable to a decline in demand. Chinese firms have substantially surpassed their German counterparts, reducing the nation's reliance on imports. Certain politicians, particularly those who are critical of China, Greens, contend that Germany should take action to distance itself from China in light of these trends. Recent research from the Kiel Institute estimates that a significant break with China would reduce the German economy by approximately 5%, comparable to the recession Germany endured in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis or the COVID pandemic. Alternatively stated, it would be severe but not fatal. Schularik of Kiel said our nation possesses sufficient resilience to handle even the most extreme scenario. However, facing that storm head-on is simpler said than done. Scholz can ill afford to see Germany's business relations with China deteriorate further when his nation's economy is already struggling. What is what? Scholz is currently destitute and lacks alternative options. German industry has already established significant investments in the United States, which serves as the country's primary export market. In 2023, German exports to the US amounted to €158 billion, while their value to China was €97 billion. At first glance, China, which accounts for most of Germany's trade volume when exports and imports are considered, seems to offer the most promising market for expansion. Considering Germany's severe economic predicament, Scholz must appear to be taking action to increase exports. Moreover, considering the historical achievements of German corporations in China, there is no more suitable setting for him to demonstrate his seriousness about conducting business to the electorate. However, beyond the realm of optics, a more intricate calculus exists. Berlin is placed in a precarious position by the tensions between Washington and Beijing regarding Taiwan and global security, even if China's current economic difficulties are temporary. Nearly 20% of Germany's trade is conducted with the United States and China, therefore, the nation cannot afford to lose either. This explains Scholz's attempt to strike a balance between the two. Due to its security dependence on the United States, Germany might be compelled to yield to American pressure to distance itself from China should the situation escalate to the point of no return. However, like Angela Merkel before him, Scholz has thus far managed to balance the two relationships. This success is partially attributable to Berlin's empty assurances. Berlin, for instance, resisted U.S. pressure to prohibit Chinese-owned Huawei from supplying equipment for Germany's modern mobile phone networks while agreeing to examine the matter closely. After 5 years, Germany continues to search. Huawei, meanwhile, maintains its constant activity. Notwithstanding the fact that Scholz's administration takes these matters seriously, the federal government is working to de-risk economic relations with China, according to a report titled Strategy on China that was commissioned by the government and released last year. Scholz is fortunate that the German language does not have a term for de-risk, which could account for the apparent lack of seriousness regarding the concept among influential individuals in Berlin. China-focused think tanks in Berlin were preoccupied with the government's much-touted strategy document for months, but it was merely a 64-page paper tiger. In the tangible realm, the German industrial sector has failed to diminish its involvement with China and is in dire straits. In 2023, German direct investment in China attained an all-time high of approximately €12 billion. The Germans made more significant investments in China from 2021 to 2023 compared to the 5 years prior to 2020, as reported by Scholz, a renowned economics institute. The city of Kowtow. No one is more aware of Germany's dependence on China than Xi. After his de facto coronation as lifelong leader in 2022, Scholz was the initial foreign leader to visit him. Scholz and his accompanying group endeavored to present the journey as a peacekeeping expedition, asserting that they had persuaded Xi to rein in Vladimir Putin, the then president of Russia, from threatening to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Despite this, Scholz's primary concern remained commerce. Ignoring raised fears in Washington, he traveled to Beijing with a delegation of approximately 12 industry executives. Scholz's visit this time is even more encouraging. 3 cities are on his itinerary: Shanghai, Beijing, and Chongqing, a metropolis of 30 million inhabitants home to hundreds of German businesses. Scholz's mission will be marked by a significant event on Tuesday, an extended audience with Xi. Notwithstanding its declining economic position, Germany continues to be a significant target for China on account of its influence within the European Union and its strong diplomatic relations with the United States. Next year's re-election of Donald Trump would provide Xi Jinping with an exceptional opportunity to court Berlin by pledging stronger economic relations. Above all, Scholz was ultimately able to abandon the delicate dance of Germany.